The hum of the refrigerator in our impossibly quiet kitchen was a constant low thrum against the backdrop of my hollow existence. It had been 7 years since Mark and I had exchanged vows, promises whispered in a sun-drenched garden, promises I'd once believed were as solid and unyielding as the ancient oak under which we stood. Now those vows felt like a faded photograph, brittle and easily torn. Our life, from the outside, was a testament to success. A meticulously renovated Victorian in a tree-lined suburb, 2 reliable cars in the drive, a pair of well-behaved golden retrievers, and a calendar dotted with polite social engagements. We had the good life, the one advertised on billboards and painted in pastel hues in home decor magazines. Our dinner parties were legendary for their effortless elegance, our vacations meticulously planned getaways to picturesque European capitals. When people asked how we were, I'd smile, a practiced luminous curve of my lips, and say, "We're wonderful, thank you." And they believed me. Everyone believed me. Inside, though, the house was filled with an echoing silence that pressed down on me like a physical weight. Mark was a good man, steady, reliable, utterly predictable. He loved me, I knew he did, in his own way. A quiet, assumed love, like a comfortable armchair that's always been there. But somewhere along the line, the spark had died. Extinguished, not by a sudden gust of wind, but by the slow, insidious drip of routine. Our conversations had become transactional. Grocery lists, household repairs, the upcoming quarterly report for his firm, my latest project at the gallery. There was no delving, no vulnerability, no curious exploration of each other's inner worlds. It was as if we'd built a magnificent ship, only to let it drift aimlessly in a vast, empty ocean, content to merely stay afloat. I remember one particularly poignant evening, the kind that now, in retrospect, feels like a premonition. We were eating roasted chicken, perfectly cooked, as always, at our large mahogany dining table. The clinking of cutlery was the loudest sound. Mark was recounting a story about a frustrating client, his voice a low, even drone. I listened, nodding at appropriate intervals, my gaze fixed on a small, dark blemish on the otherwise pristine tablecloth. My mind, however, was miles away, wondering when was the last time he'd truly looked at me. Not just at my face, but into my eyes, searching for the person beneath the polished surface. I felt an overwhelming urge to scream, to smash my plate, to do anything that would shatter the elegant composure of our lives and force a real reaction. Instead, I just nodded again and offered a sympathetic murmur. The chicken tasted like ash in my mouth. Our physical intimacy had dwindled to a polite rarity, predictable and passionless. It was a chore, a box to tick, a duty fulfilled. I craved touch, not just the fleeting brush of his hand as he passed me the salt, but hungry, searching touch that affirmed my existence, that made me feel desired, alive. Long pause. Lying beside him in bed, the heavy linen sheets cool against my skin, I would stare at the ceiling, listening to the even rhythm of his breathing, feeling utterly, terrifyingly alone. My body felt like a forgotten instrument, dusty and out of tune, yearning for a melody it no longer remembered how to play. Sighs. The loneliness was a physical ache, a dull throb behind my ribs that settled deeper each night. I tried, in my own quiet ways. I bought new lingerie, suggested a weekend getaway, tried to initiate conversations about us. But my attempts were met with a mild perplexity, a benign dismissal, a quiet turning away. The silence of his indifference was far more deafening than any argument could have been. And so, I retreated, sealing myself inside a glass box, watching the world through a distorted lens, becoming increasingly invisible, even to myself. The gallery where I worked was hosting an exhibition of emerging local artists. It was the kind of event that required me to be vivacious, knowledgeable, a vibrant ambassador for art. I could put on that persona with practiced ease, a mask so convincing it often fooled me too. It was during the preview night, amidst the clink of champagne flutes and the murmur of polite conversation, that I first truly noticed Leo. He was a sculptor, ruggedly handsome, with intense eyes that seemed to miss nothing, and a crooked, disarming smile. His art was raw, visceral, brimming with a turbulent energy. Hat mirrored a nascent storm within me. Excited! He approached me to discuss the placement of his pieces, his voice a low, rumbling baritone that sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. We talked about light, about form,
about the interplay of shadow and negative space. But as we spoke, his gaze wasn't just on the art, it was on me. Surprised, he listened with an intensity that I hadn't experienced in years, truly listened, his head tilted slightly, a genuine curiosity in his eyes. When I offered a critique of one of his pieces, expecting polite acknowledgement, he surprised me by engaging, by pushing back, by making me think. The conversation flowed effortlessly, moving from art to philosophy, to absurd anecdotes about our respective industries. Grateful, I felt a surge of adrenaline, a warmth spreading through my chest. It wasn't just the champagne, it was the thrill of being intellectually stimulated, of being challenged, of being seen.
He walked me to my car that night, the city air cool and crisp around us. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Eleanor," he said, his voice soft. "I hope we get to talk more." He didn't ask for my number, just let the implied possibility hang in the air. The next day, an email appeared in my inbox. Subject: on negative space. Our conversation last night. It was a playful, intelligent continuation of our discussion, peppered with a casual inquiry about the gallery's upcoming schedule. I replied, carefully crafting my words, feeling a mischievous flutter in my stomach. What harm could it do? It was just a professional email after all. The emails became more frequent, then transitioned to text messages. Innocent at first, logistical questions about the exhibition, thoughts on new artists. But slowly, imperceptibly, the lines blurred. His text started appearing late at night, a soft buzz on my bedside table, a forbidden light illuminating.
I'd gee my face in the dark. He'd ask about my day, about my thoughts on the latest book I was reading, about my dreams. He asked about me, sad, and I, starved for connection, responded with an eagerness that both thrilled and terrified me. Excited, I found myself anticipating his messages with a desperate intensity, a tight knot of excitement and anxiety coiling in my gut. My phone became an extension of myself, clutched in my hand, my thumb hovering over the screen, ready to respond the instant his name popped up. My heart would hammer against my ribs when I saw his name, a frantic drumbeat demanding attention. I'd slip into the pantry, feigning a search for a forgotten spice, just to read his words, a secret smile playing on my lips. Sad. Then the guilt would wash over me, cold and sharp, an icy shard piercing the fleeting warmth. Frustrated. What am I doing? I'd ask myself, clutching the kitchen counter until my knuckles went white. This is just friendly banter. It's harmless. It's nothing. But deep down, a tremor of fear, a thrill of danger, told me it was everything. Chuckles. He made me laugh, truly laugh, a sound that had felt foreign in my own ears for so long. He challenged my perspectives, sparked forgotten passions. He saw the woman beneath the mask, the vibrant, yearning individual I had thought was long buried.
I found myself meticulously planning my day around potential opportunities to check my phone, to craft the perfect witty reply, to relive the ghost of his words. The mundane details of my life with Mark seemed to recede, blurred at the edges, overshadowed by the vibrant, illicit glow of my screen. I was walking a tightrope, denying the precipice beneath me, convincing myself that the adrenaline I felt was simply the exhilaration of rediscovering a part of myself, not the dangerous pull towards something destructive. It was a slow, intoxicating poison, each text a drop, until I was swimming in a delicious, dangerous haze. My senses sharpened. The rustle of the leaves outside our bedroom window, the distant barking of a dog, the ticking of the antique clock in the hall. Everything seemed more vivid, more acute, as if my body was preparing for something momentous, something
shattering, and it was. Sad. The invitation to the gallery's annual summer fundraiser landed in my inbox a week before it was scheduled. It was always a lavish affair, held at a rented event space with a sweeping view of the city skyline, complete with live music and an open bar. Mark would be working late, a predictable conflict that always seemed to arise when I had a social engagement. He wasn't particularly keen on attending. Sighs. A familiar pang of resignation hit me. Another night where I'd navigate a sea of faces performing my role, then return home to a quiet, empty house. Excited. But then, Leo's name appeared on the RSVP list. A sudden jolt of electricity surged through me, banishing the resignation. This wasn't just a work event anymore. This was an event.
I spent far too long choosing my dress. A sleek black silk number that clung to my curves in all the right places, subtly revealing a bare shoulder. I applied my makeup with an artist's precision, highlighting my eyes, plumping my lips with a daring shade of crimson. Every movement was deliberate, infused with an almost ceremonial intent. I could feel the thrum of anticipation vibrating beneath my skin. The moment I stepped into the venue, the thumping bass of the music hit me first. A physical force that vibrated through the floorboards and up my legs. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, spilled champagne, and the nervous energy of a crowd intent on enjoyment. Dazzling strobe lights painted shifting patterns across the ceiling and the dancing bodies. I scanned the room, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, an insistent drum.
Eat echoing the music, surprised. And then I saw him. He was standing near the bar, talking animatedly with a small group of people, his head thrown back in a laugh. He looked even better than I remembered, dressed in a charcoal suit, his dark hair falling boyishly across his forehead. Gasps. He caught my eye across the crowded room, and his smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then broadened into a knowing, private grin that sent a tremor through my entire body. A wave of heat rushed up my neck, staining my cheeks. Exhaled sharply. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Excited, he extricated himself from his conversation and made his way towards me, his gaze never leaving mine. The noise of the club seemed to recede, the flashing lights blurring into a kaleidoscope of colors. It was just us. Whispers. "Eleanor," he said, his voice a low murmur even over the music. "You look breathtaking." The words were simple, yet they landed with the weight of an unspoken promise. I felt my cheeks flush again, a thrilling, unbidden warmth spreading through me. Breathless. "Leo," I managed, my voice a little breathless. Thoughtful. He offered me a drink, a sparkling concoction that tasted of forbidden fruit. We talked at first about the exhibition, then about nothing at all, just allowing the words to flow, interspersed with long, comfortable silences. Curious, he had an uncanny way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room, his attention a laser focus that burned away all my usual inhibitions.
The music pulsed, drawing us closer. We drifted towards the dance floor, and soon we were moving, our bodies instinctively finding a rhythm together. His hand brushed against my lower back, sending shivers radiating outwards. The contact was innocent, yet charged with an electric current. I felt my blood hum, a delicious warmth spreading through my veins. The alcohol loosened my tongue, dulled the edges of my guilt, and amplified the insistent drum of desire. The air grew heavy, thick with unspoken longing. Our eyes locked, a silent conversation passing between us that transcended words. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, the subtle scent of his cologne mingling with my perfume. His hand slid from my back to cup my elbow. Then his fingers traced a path up my arm, feather light, igniting every nerve ending they touched. My breathing became shallow, ragged. My pulse pounded in my ears,
drowning out the music. He leaned in, his lips brushing against my earlobe, sending a jolt straight through me. Whispers. "You have no idea how much I've wanted to do this," he whispered, his voice rough with an emotion I recognized instantly. He pulled back slightly, his eyes searching mine, asking a silent question. My mind screamed a desperate warning, a flicker of Mark's face, of our quiet house, of the promises I'd made. But the roar of the music, the intoxicating atmosphere, and the intense desire swirling within me drowned it out. Sad. The years of feeling unseen, untouched, unheard, coalesced into a potent force, urging me forward. My eyes dropped to his lips, then back to his intense gaze. I bit my lower lip, a nervous habit. He saw it. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. But I didn't. I couldn't. My eyelids fluttered shut as his lips descended, soft at first, a gentle exploration, then deepening with an urgency that stole my breath, excited. It was a kiss that tasted of freedom, of illicit thrill, of every unspoken desire I had suppressed for years. My hands found their way to his shoulders, clinging to him as if I would otherwise float away, his arms wrapped around my waist, pulling me flush against him, our bodies fitting together with a startling, dangerous familiarity.
The world narrowed to the feel of his mouth on mine, the brush of his stubble against my chin, the warmth of his body pressed against mine. There was a raw hunger in the kiss that mirrored my own. It wasn't gentle, it was desperate, demanding, a silent conversation of longing and defiance. Every fiber of my being sang with a new, exhilarating song. I was alive, really, truly alive, for the first time in what felt like an eternity. When we finally broke apart, gasping for air, my lips felt bruised, swollen, impossibly full. My knees felt weak. I looked at him, my eyes wide, a mixture of terror and exhilaration warring within me. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but his lips curved into a small, triumphant smile. A smile that said, "We crossed a line, and there's no going back." And in that moment, in the dizzying aftermath of the kiss, a terrifying thought surfaced. I didn't want to go back. Not yet. The morning.
After was a brutal awakening. The headache throbbed behind my eyes, a relentless beat mirroring the bass from the club. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the leaden weight in my stomach. Sad, the suffocating cloak of shame that had descended with the harsh light of dawn. I lay in my bed, Mark's even breathing beside me, a constant, gentle reproach. My mouth still tingled, a ghostly echo of Leo's kiss, and the memory of his arms around me sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. I moved through the motions of breakfast, forcing down lukewarm coffee and toast, my smile stiff and brittle when Mark inquired about my evening. Sarcastic. "It was fine," I heard myself say, the lie tasting like ash on my tongue. "Just the usual. Drank too much, danced a little." He nodded, absorbed in his newspaper, not even looking up, frustrated. His lack of curiosity, once a source of quiet despair, was now a shield, allowing me to hide the toxic secret festering within.
But the secret wouldn't stay hidden. Leo texted me that afternoon, "Thinking about you, Eleanor." A simple message, yet it sent a fresh jolt through me, a mix of thrill and panic. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, and reread it, my finger trembling as I typed a cautious reply. "You too, Leo." That was the start. Our double life became an intricate, exhausting dance. Text messages exchanged under the cover of darkness, during errands or lunch meetings. Clandestine coffee dates that stretched into lingering conversations in parked cars. Our voices hushed, our eyes constantly scanning for familiar faces. His touch, a fleeting brush of his hand against mine, a momentary squeeze of my arm, became the most potent drug. Each touch was a confirmation, a reminder that I was desired, alive, vibrant, and each touch plunged me deeper into the abyss of my deceit. I started to transform. My personality shift.
Ed, a dangerous metamorphosis. At home, I became meticulously careful, almost obsessively so. Every interaction with Mark was scrutinized, every word weighed. I'd ask him about his day with exaggerated interest, feign concern about his stress, initiate conversation with a desperate cheerfulness that felt utterly false. Frustrated, I became adept at lying, weaving intricate webs of half-truths and omissions. The phone was always face down, always muted. My purse was a fortress, my messages deleted with compulsive regularity. Angry, I lived in a constant state of hypervigilance, my nerves frayed, my stomach churning with anxiety. Every unexpected knock at the door, every unfamiliar car on our street, every lingering glance from Mark felt like an accusation. Gasps. The paranoia was a cold hand gripping my heart, squeezing until I could barely breathe. Once during a quiet dinner, Mark mentioned seeing Leo's artwork featured in a local magazine. My fork clattered against my plate, the sound startlingly loud in the sudden silence. "Oh, really?" I managed, my voice a strained whisper. My heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to burst through my chest. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. He didn't notice. He just continued, "Yes, quite striking. Talented fellow." I nodded, forcing a tight smile, trying to control the tremor in my hands. That night, sleep was impossible. I lay awake, replaying the moment, imagining the intricate ways my secret could unravel. The euphoria of being with Leo was intense, intoxicating. He made me feel young, reckless, desired. He listened to me, truly listened, absorbing my words, reflecting them back with a depth I hadn't known I craved. Our conversations were electric, vibrant. Our stolen moments, brief touches, lingering glances, were charged with an intensity that burned away the gray monotony of my married life. Sad, but the exhilaration was always followed by the crushing weight of guilt. It would hit me like a physical blow, a visceral twist in my stomach, a cold dread that spread through my limbs. I would catch my reflection in a shop window and barely recognize the haunted eyes, the strained smile. Frustrated, I was two people, the vibrant, daring woman with Leo and the hollow, guilt-ridden imposter at home. The duality was tearing me apart. Angry, I felt a profound disgust with myself, a self-loathing that gnawed at me constantly. My conscience screamed at me, a relentless, punishing voice. I was hurting Mark, betraying his trust, dismantling the life we had built. Each lie chipped away at my integrity, leaving me feeling increasingly fractured, a stranger in my own skin. The thrill began to curdle, replaced by a desperate, sickening anxiety. The stolen moments with Leo started to feel less like freedom and more like a cage, a gilded prison constructed from lies and illicit desires. Sighs. The exhaustion was overwhelming, not just physical, but an emotional and spiritual depletion. I was constantly battling myself, an internal war that left me drained, emotionally bruised. Sad. The crash, when it came, wasn't a sudden explosion, but a slow, agonizing implosion. It started subtly, a creeping realization that the exhilaration I felt with Leo was no longer enough to counteract the gnawing guilt. The thrill had faded, replaced by a hollow ache, a profound emptiness that even his presence couldn't fill. Our conversations, once so vibrant, began to feel repetitive, tinged with an unspoken sadness about the impossibility of our situation. His kisses, once so electrifying, now felt like a desperate attempt to silence the clamoring voices in my head. Tearful, I was losing myself, dissolving into this chaotic, unsustainable double life.
Then came the night I broke. It was a Tuesday, typically a quiet evening. Mark had asked me, quite innocently, about my plans for the weekend. Perhaps we could go for a hike, he suggested, his voice gentle. It's been a while, hasn't it? The genuine warmth in his voice, the simple, earnest desire for connection, shattered something inside me. The carefully constructed facade crumbled. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not the distant, predictable husband I had become accustomed to, but the kind, good man who had once loved me, and perhaps still did, in his quiet way. I saw the comfort and stability he represented, the home he had helped us build, the life I was systematically destroying. The magnitude of my betrayal, the depth of the pain I was inflicting, crashed down on me with terrifying force. I excused myself from the table, my stomach lurching. I stumbled into the bathroom, locked its door, and slumped against the cool tiles. Crying. The tears came then, hot and stinging, a torrential downpour after months of drought. They weren't just tears of guilt. They were tears of self-hatred, of profound exhaustion, of a raw, searing grief for the person I had once been, for the marriage I had desecrated, for the innocence I had irrevocably lost. Sad, I stared at my reflection, my face a distorted mask of anguish, and saw a stranger, a woman I barely recognized, a hollowed-out shell riddled with deceit. Sad, the guilt was a physical sickness. My body trembled uncontrollably. Gasps. My breath came in shallow, ragged gasps. I slid down the wall until I was huddled on the floor, my knees drawn to my chest, my arms wrapped around myself as if to contain the splintering pieces of my soul. Frustrated, I felt a tightening in my chest, a fierce, burning sensation, as if my heart itself was constricting, trying to escape the unbearable weight of my actions. I hadn't had a full night's sleep in weeks. Insomnia had become my constant companion, each night a restless torture of replaying moments, crafting desperate excuses, battling the demons of my conscience. Now, even the thought of closing my eyes was an unbearable prospect. Sad. The next few days were a blur of intense emotional pain. I couldn't eat, food tasted like sawdust. My head ached constantly, a dull throb that permeated my entire being. Frustrated, I would snap at Mark over trivial things, then immediately burst into tears, apologizing profusely, attributing my erratic behavior to stress at the gallery. He looked at me with a bewildered concern that only intensified my self-loathing. Appalled, I felt trapped, suffocating under the weight of my secret. The thought of continuing this charade, of living this fractured existence, filled me with an unspeakable horror. I felt like an actress performing a role in a tragedy, desperately trying to remember her lines, while the stage around her slowly caught fire. The clarity emerged from the chaos, a cold, sharp certainty that sliced through the fog of my despair. This could not continue. I could not continue. I was destroying myself, destroying everything good and true in my life. The affair with Leo, which had initially felt like a lifeline, now felt like an anchor dragging me deeper into murky waters. It wasn't love, it was an escape, a desperate attempt to fill a void that only I could truly address. The decision to confess wasn't a moment of courage, but a moment of utter desperation. It felt like walking to my own execution, each step heavy with the knowledge of the devastation I was about to unleash. The fear was monumental. Fear of losing Mark, of shattering his trust irreparably, of facing his anger, his disgust, his profound heartbreak. I knew I would break him. And the thought of doing that, of causing such immense pain to a man who had done nothing but treat me with kindness, was almost unbearable. Long pause. But beneath the fear, there was a desperate, burning need for truth, for liberation from the suffocating prison of my lies. I craved authenticity, even if it meant total annihilation. I practiced the words in my head, over and over again in the shower, in my car, lying awake in the dark. Each rehearsal felt like carving them onto my own flesh. They were simple words, devastating in their power. Sad, I knew there would be no easy path, no gentle forgiveness. I would likely lose everything, our beautiful home, our shared history, the comfortable rhythm of our lives. Exhaled sharply, but the alternative, the endless continuation of this double life, this slow, agonizing self-destruction, was far more terrifying. I needed to unburden myself, to face the consequences, to rip off the bandage, no matter how much it bled. The knot in my stomach tightened until it was a solid, aching mass. My hands trembled as I sat at the kitchen table, waiting for Mark to come home. The refrigerator hummed, a low, steady drone. It was louder than usual tonight. The silence of the house, once a symbol of my loneliness, was now pregnant with the unspoken, a heavy shroud of anticipation. My heart pounded a frantic tattoo against my ribs, each beat a painful reminder of the truth I was about to confess. My throat felt raw, as if I had already screamed the words. The confession would not be absolution. It would be the first step on a long, brutal road to reckoning. And I knew, with chilling certainty, that I deserved every single painful step.